Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Quigley on Divorce, a behind-the-scenes look. I'm joined again with my sidekick, superstar associate Jordan Rosenberg. Jordan, thanks for joining us remotely again today.
Of course, I got the virtual background and everything going for you, James.
I was going to say, I thought you were in your penthouse down in Miami for a minute there.
Yeah, can't you see my lake, my ocean view?
I can a little bit in the background. Looks great. We're, as you all might have gathered, we're still sheltered. We're coming to you today really because it was another sort of blow to us in the legal profession, and that the court system here in at least Cook County has said we're shut down. Again, the opening was supposed to be originally, I think, April 8th after Easter, then it was April 28th, and then it was May 18th. And today, one more time, now we're looking at June 1st. So, it's a setback. It's something we are trying to work around. We've been working around it for the last, 6 weeks, give or take. And, it's interesting. So Jordan and I have done some podcasting together. One of the things we've been talking about is the frustrations early on with parenting arrangements and, can you transport children with the fear of, the coronavirus and these kinds of things. And, now we're starting to see a bit of a segue from some of the parenting issues, which is kind of just settled in. It is what it is. And, people are following their schedules a little bit more now. And now we're starting to see the financial issues coming up. I was telling you, Jordan, I just had a former client call in, and her ex-husband now is saying, I can't pay because my business is slowing down, and he's got an obligation to pay maintenance. And so what's going to happen with these petitions now that are starting to pour in with people being hit by this economy, and how does that blend with their obligations under divorce judgments?
Right. I mean, I have a client, I think I was talking about in another podcast of yours, and again, happy to be a guest. I have a client who literally got a pay cut of 60%, and he's obligated to pay maintenance and child support. And so in this case, luckily, it was one of those things where I had just reached out to the other lawyer and I said, listen, can we work something out by agreement? Because, kind of getting it in front of the judges is a little laborious sometimes. But he was able to work with his client, and we were able to reach an agreement. But not everybody plays like that, and there's different situations and there's different personalities in each case. And, assuming that in any other case, someone's income, someone gets laid off or furloughed or their income gets cut by 60%, you can't possibly afford in virtually every scenario to maintain your own expenses, pay maintenance, and then pay child support at an income level that is double of what you're currently earning.
Right. To me, that's what's interesting, is that's a bit more cut and dry in terms of how I would view something like that. If you are a W-2 wage earner and your salary literally gets cut 60% or 20% or something like that, completely involuntary, that's one scenario which I think is more on the side of, I don't want to say a no-brainer, but it's a little more straightforward.
Yep.
Case we had come in the other day, the individual is a high-income wage earner who has his own business. And so he, says things are slow. It doesn't mean he's not going to get paid. Maybe he's not getting paid right now. Just like we as lawyers, we send our bills every month. Clients pay their bill usually at the end of the month or when they get their bill. But what if someone's having a hard time and they don't pay their lawyer bill this month? They're going to pay it. But what if it doesn't come for 2 months? Can I go and say, well, geez, my income is down because I've had a couple slow months? That's a bit of a tenuous argument.
Right. Especially, people like barbers, for example, or people who cut hair. And again, that's an example, but other service-based industries where you require that in-person contact to do your job, surgeons, some doctors who are doing elective surgeries, dentists, maybe, those are areas where, gross revenues are going to be down, and to a certain extent, they're almost zero. And so, I guess I mean, I don't think it's clear in how judges are handling that and what people's rights are to modify support at that point.
Well, that's in that lack of clarity in this, we probably sound like a broken record because every time we talk and have a podcast, we're talking about the lack of clarity in any of this stuff. We can now speak to our audience and talk about how most of the county courthouses, Lake County, Cook County, DuPage County, McHenry County, they are opening themselves up to some kind of process. We've done Zoom hearings where the judge is literally on a Zoom with us, but it's not the same. You know, they're oftentimes getting judges making more recommendations, but this wave now of the financial cases coming in, you know, they're starting to get a little more clarity with the parenting issues, but now this new wave with the financial stuff, we don't have a lot of history to guide us on this. And so people are filing the petitions now, and there's usually two petitions, right? One is either the person whose income drops, where they are petitioning the court saying, give me some relief, I can't pay. Or it's the recipient saying, you know, my former spouse is not paying me my maintenance or my child support. And, you know, they may have their own issues, but I still have bills to be paid. I still have children to support. And so they got to pay. And you file your petition for rule asking that they be held in contempt of court. So under the rules, you know, people still get time to respond. And so these may not play out for 21 days, 28 days, you know, it might be sometime before we start getting a little direction from the courts.
Right. And one interesting point, James, we're actually on a trial right now where we're actually trying to ascertain a small business owner's income. And, you know, we're arguing to set someone's income higher than what they report on their tax return. And so I imagine that that individual is going to stand there, and if income is an issue in a case, and say, oh, I'm not making any income, my business is tanking, which might be the case, but how do you see that playing out in the divorce world?
Yeah, again, I'm not a judge, obviously. I've been doing this a long time. Jordan, you're doing a long time. My sense is that if I'm a judge and someone comes to me and in the midst of this very crazy window of time, unprecedented in our lifetimes, is saying, I need some relief, I'm inclined as a judge to say, okay, let me understand what is coming in. Maybe I'm going to reduce a payment in the short term, understanding that when you get rolling again, you got to pay that money back. You know, and so maybe there's something where they're going to have to balance an individual's need to maybe get some kind of a relief against this other need of the recipient to say, I still am reliant on that child support. I'm reliant on that maintenance. And so how much money do we have to spread around in the short term, and in the long term meaning it could be several months, how do we then make up for that lost revenue during that period of time? What's fair?
And I think that brings up another really interesting point is, what does normal life look like? And so if for a small business owner, I mean, is it a fair snapshot to say, yeah, let's look back the last 3 years and not include 2020 for purposes of looking at someone's income and how it's going to look moving forward?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just a really interesting issue in terms of saying, hey, this is your income. This is how it's been the last 3 years. I don't know that anyone knows that it's expected to be the same depending on what you're doing.
Yeah. It's, you know, we keep talking about the uncertain nature of these times. It's just, you know, we're seeing so much happening in the world, you know, with this coronavirus, and, you know, the unintended consequences of all of this, you know, sheltering and shutting down are starting to really rear their ugly head in a financial realm. I mean, we've seen, I saw reported that I think they said over 30 million people have applied for unemployment since this whole thing started. And, you know, can people pay their mortgages? Can they pay their child support obligation? Can they pay their maintenance obligations? I mean, these are real questions. And it might be different if we had some answers to say, okay, well, we are actually, everybody's going back to work June 1st. Well, okay, so if I'm a judge, I'm not really going to do anything drastic because there's a 30-day wait. And I do think that, like you said, what the bigger picture is at the end of the year. What are your earnings? Are you back to work? So I think a lot of these financial cases, my own opinion, Jordan, is I think they're going to take a short-term and long-term view of it. It's not going to be something where you're going to run into court, you get your maintenance and child support reduced, and you get to pay a limited amount hereafter. I think judges are probably going to look and try to be pragmatic in the short term, understanding we might have to take a look at this at the end of June, at the end of August, at the end of September, and at the end of the year, and say, all right, are you permanently shocked? Are you, you went from, X number of dollars down 60%, and that's now your new salary? Well, if that's the case, you're going to be entitled to some relief, for short term and long term, I would think.
I mean, do you think, at least from your perspective, that, so there's a difference between modifying support and abating support?
Yes.
If you were a judge at this point, would you modify support or abate support? And I guess, what does that look like?
So, and that's a great question. And I will add to that, one of the things in answering that, you also have to take into the consideration a court's ability to make a ruling retroactive back to when you filed for something. So my inclination, if I were a judge, I'm going to abate support, meaning I might do something on a temporary basis, which means I could say you literally do not have any money you can't pay for now, or I might be able to reduce it, but in abating it, you still owe that money. So let's say you're paying $2,500 per month, child support or maintenance, $2,500 a month, and I've been cut 60% of my salary. And so, by the way, all you viewers and listeners, this is one of those kind of attorney's tips. Remember this: your court-ordered legal obligation for child support, for maintenance, is expected to be paid before you pay your mortgage, before you pay your Amazon charges. So if you say, well, I've got these normal expenses, the courts look at your court-ordered obligations and your efforts to pay those first. So if you think you can put those to the back end, hey, listen, well, at least we paid our mortgage, we paid our credit card off this month, we paid the tuition, we paid everything, we're in good shape, I just can't afford to pay my child support, you're going to have a problem. And so, but back to your question, Jordan, I do think that it's reasonable to take a look at this snapshot in time and say, let's try to make things work for both sides now. And if it turns out that, you know what, you really are suffering that 60% loss on a forward going basis, I might modify my order from an abatement and say, no, you don't owe that. What you owe back is 60% of that or something, because I'm going back retroactively now that I see this is a permanent reduction. And, and so we can go back to the filing and we can make the adjustments there. I think in another challenging situation, people who just lose their job altogether. You're not guaranteed of getting back at the same income level. How easy or difficult is it going to be for people who've lost their jobs to just go get a new job when all this is done?
Right. I mean, there's so many uncertainties, and that's sort of what's mind-boggling and frustrating for us as lawyers. And there's already a lot of uncertainties, like you were saying, but now just piling this on, it's very important to stay organized, be proactive, and communicate with somebody immediately. But another issue that we've run into is, on this financial thing, is college. I mean, people with college obligations, forthcoming college obligations. Now we have kids staying at home. Is there some element of support from the parent who the child's not living with to the other parent? What do you do in terms of living expenses? I mean, it just throws a whole wrench into things. And I mean, you, James, you have kids home from college, so there's a lot going on. Your household expenses go up or down, I'm not sure, but you know, it's just a whole different scenario and another interesting issue that we're dealing with.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because I received a beautiful email from Indiana University, basically congratulating my oldest son from graduating from college. I was supposed to be down in Bloomington. You know, the business school had its own graduation. We were going to be celebrating his graduation this weekend. So, you know, that, and last week, then the bursar's office sent the, you know, the final housing payment for him. So, you know, go figure, like, all these expenses continue to roll in. You know, you hear these stories of some places making, you know, deferring payments for people and some of those kinds of things, and trying to everybody work together. But as you noted before, even with some of the parenting stuff, our ability to be, you know, successful in advocating for clients in this time depends in large part upon who's on the other side, how reasonable are people willing to be. We've engaged wonderful mediators in trying to get them to help problem solve. But again, mediation only works if the people and the lawyers who are participating are approaching it in an equitable fashion. We've got some judges who seem to be more available or making themselves more available than others. And so who your case is assigned to is going to dictate to some extent how much we can accomplish from a litigation standpoint. So, you know, the hope is, and you know, I guess the message in all of this, it's the same message we talked about in all the parenting issues, Jordan, which is you gotta have some common sense in this. You know, if you approach this in a way where, you know, you're trying to do this fairly and equitably with an ex-spouse, okay, let's work together and let's try to manage things that way. But you know, if you've got someone that just says, I'm not going to pay anymore, I can't pay anymore, well, you're going to invite litigation and all of the complexities that come with that, with the shutdown and the courts having limited access. And you're going to end up spending a lot of money paying people like you and I to help try to problem solve. So try to be reasonable, try to be transparent. You know, if you're a spouse that loses, or an ex-spouse that has lost a job, or your income's down, don't just say, well, I can't pay, you know, I'm not making it much. Well, you know, be transparent with the documentation, or, you know, what do you have to support this fact? Don't make me go through the discovery process and spend a lot of legal fees to look at your bank records and your credit cards and see what you're spending and stuff. You know, be fair about it on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've found a lot of success in just people exercising that common sense. And I think if somebody has a maintenance obligation or a child support obligation, or they're financially tied in some respect, things move pretty quickly, obviously, anyways, if people agree. But I think now there's a greater sense of togetherness, and that everyone's going through the exact same thing. And so at least I've found people to be a little bit more cooperative. And you know, in the case where our client lost 60, you know, got cut 60% of his income, you know, along with that came a letter from his company to kind of show that it actually happened, a pay stub that actually happened. And what I've found, and maybe optimistically, is that people have been cooperative and understanding. And so I think it's one of those things where if it's, I agree with what you said. I think if people kind of understand, be empathetic to the situation, and kind of think about it more as a temporary basis, let's get through this, then that's where I found a lot of success.
Yeah. And really, I mean, I think the last thing I would say about this is, you know, if you're the one who is suffering economically, you know, don't run to your lawyer first. Don't just say, I'm not going to do something. You know, try to have a conversation with someone and say, hey, listen, you know, here's kind of what's going on. You know, is there something we can do? Don't just tell somebody I'm cutting your support amount, or not even telling them and then just don't do it. You know, but again, we operate in a world where emotions run high, even after divorce. And, you know, people don't always have that ability, but, you know, what we're really trying to do is help you to use those resources that you have as a family to help support your families, because otherwise you're going to be paying us a retainer. We're going to be fighting for you. We are going to be advocating for you. That's what we do. But at some level, if you don't have the money to pay support, do you have the money to litigate? And you're going to have to pay us, just like you're going to end up having to pay some support anyway. So try to be cooperative, try to work together. Understand that all of us, including, Jordan and myself, we're sitting in our homes, and we got dogs barking. I hear my kids' basketball, bouncing out in the driveway. We're all trying to make sense of these crazy times. We're all trying to earn a living. We're all trying to get through it. And so, it's the same thing we keep saying: take a step back, try to see it through the other person's point of view, try to be cooperative as much as we can. Understand kids, they're suffering through this too. So the last thing they need is to have, their lives change dramatically because now the finances of their folks are changed. So do your best. And listen, we're here for you. We're going to continue to do these podcast episodes, giving you the updates, telling you some of the issues we're dealing with in divorce, and hope that it gives you some kind of perspective. Nobody has all of the answers. Nobody can tell you this is absolutely what's going to happen. This is what happened. And that makes it difficult for us because a lot of times we are in the business of predicting an outcome. We're expected to know a result based upon our experience. No one has experience in this area. So stay strong, stay healthy, stay positive. Thank God the sun shined a little bit. You saw a couple of stripes coming across my face. If you're watching the video part of this, sun was beaming through my windows a little bit, thank God. But otherwise, Jordan, thanks again for joining us. This isn't going to be the last podcast that we'll be bringing to you guys on Corona. And so, again, stay healthy. And if you ever need to get in touch with us, Jordan Rosenberg, James Quigley, thanks for following along. You can contact us. Our website is www.beermannlaw.com. And our telephone number at the office, the main office, is 312-621-9700. Be well.